All right, good morning. Again, Pat, do you guys have your entire team here?
Yes, we do.
All right. I believe we are recording. So good morning, everyone. Again, this is the Design Advisory Panel meeting for May 25th, 2022. Stephanie Dickel, I'm the Regulatory Supervisor for Down County, and I will be facilitating today's meeting. Just a reminder, the meeting is being recorded. The format for today will be presentation by the design team, discussion with the panel, and comments from the public if anyone is in attendance, and then determination of the next steps. This project is the 7340 Wisconsin Avenue project, and it is at sketch plan amendment stage, correct, Pat? Are we amending the sketch plan?
Actually, there's no need to amend the sketch plan here. It is preliminary plan amendment and site plan. Yes.
All right, thank you. Just a real brief recap on this one. The DAP saw the 7340 Wisconsin Avenue sketch plan back in September 2019 and February of 2020. And that was for a 250-foot tall building for senior living with ground floor retail. The applicant and architect have changed from the original approval, and they are now proposing to change the use from senior living to multifamily with ground floor and residential amenities. So I will turn it over to the design team now for their presentation.
Thank you, Stephanie. Again, good morning, everyone. Pat Harris with Larch Early & Brewer. With me is my colleague, Marissa Rose. We're here on behalf of Greystar, the applicant, and Patrick Lyons and John Beinart from Greystar here. And then we have our SK&I development team. Before I turn it over to Andy to present the project, I just want to note, as Stephanie just did, this project was before you a couple of years ago for sketch plan approval, and we have tried very hard to adhere to a number of the foundational principles that were agreed to at that time. But what we wanted to do is bring it back to you with the intent that really we want to come back again to you to present this. So the thought is that we've pulled back some of the design features so that we can get the DAP's approval on the massing, and the sort of massing the top of the building and some other features. And then with the intent that after we filed the site plan, we would come back again with a much more detailed site plan DAP proposal. So what you're seeing to some extent equates more to what you would expect to see at sketch plan, not site plan. Again, we recognize we'll come back with much more detail in connection with the site plan. So with that, unless there are any questions, I'll turn it over to Andy, who can walk you through the presentation. Mm-hmm. We did provide Emily yesterday with a slightly updated version from what was previously circulated, and Andy, when he walks through the presentation, will identify what has changed, just really to provide a little bit more detail and context. So Andy, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Pat. Yeah, regarding again, we're rushing, we're working towards, site plan submission, and obviously we'll come back to you with a much more detailed version of this. But I think, to Pat's point, we really wanted to, we're changing uses, changing ownership, and we wanted to take a step back and like just kind of confirm all of the assumptions that were that were set up and established in the sketch plan, and then how we're tweaking that. Obviously this is a very predominant site at the heart of Bethesda on Wisconsin Avenue, with Montgomery Lane on the north, Hamden on the south. Immediately across from the one of the red line elevator stops, and then the new purple line station is just a block to the south of us. Going forward, this is obviously the Exxon station that everyone has seen fenced up for almost a decade now. So, we at SK&I are very excited about this opportunity to transform and elevate this site to what it really needs to become. I don't need to go through the images. You're well aware of the site. We wanted to just, define the goals of the project, obviously strengthen the center of activity at the heart of the Wisconsin corridor, promote a diversified mix of housing, downtown Bethesda through mixed use multifamily development, enhance the quality of the housing through the county's design excellence programs, improve the neighborhood identity and character, and support innovation and design excellence. Beautify the downtown through greening and improved streetscapes, and add residential density immediately adjacent to public transportation and reduce vehicle miles. These are all statements that are all at the core of the Bethesda plan. And we're very excited to deliver those. So just taking a step back, we wanted to walk through sort of what was previously approved, so everyone sort of has the same kind of basis of starting point. This is the building mass. It's allowed to go 250 feet. It has a 6-story base up to 70 feet, and this is sort of there's 2 major street types. This has 3 frontages with 2 street types. We'll go through that in a moment, but the basics gist is that each of the step backs are 10 feet on the 3 frontages, along with a 22.5-foot step back at the property line. This does but another project that is going through site plan review to the west of us, the Hamden East project. And one of the things that we did in the last couple of weeks since we submitted this to you is we actually refined that massing to better reflect what was approved at the site, or what was submitted at the site plan submission. We had previously used a sketch plan sort of drawings to refer that. So that's one of the updates. So again, this is the sort of the massing that the previous ownership team pursued. The big takeaways here that we thought were interesting were sort of pushing in the midpoint, at least along Wisconsin, pushing in the midpoint and inflecting the corners back out. This massing primarily located, it pulled, it sort of, it allowed the step backs, but then it pulled the building towards the Wisconsin and Montgomery Lane. So there was a significant corner tower, sort of a tower on the tower. And I think that was it's interesting, and we thought there were some interesting points to that, but we wanted to challenge that a little bit because obviously the use is a little bit different, and we thought a slightly different strategy could be employed here. Another thing that we've done is this was the previously approved ground floor plan. The big difference between the 2 projects is this large portico share drop off on Hamden Lane. So all of the service, all of the garage entrances, and this covered portico share was previously approved, and you'll see that we've removed that and filled it in. We sort of swapped the retail and the residential lobbies, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But the big thing is this is gone, and we've reduced the amount of curb cuts on Hamden Lane. So going back to our massing approach, working with Greystar, working with their program, and working with the massing that was approved and the density that's allocated for the site. Obviously, the opportunity is here for 3 active frontages on Hamden, on Wisconsin, and on Montgomery. There is slight of Hamden and Wisconsin are relatively flat on this site, but Montgomery does go downhill quite a bit. So we really saw that as a challenge for continuous retail on Montgomery, and we can talk about that. That's why we located sort of the address at the corner of Montgomery and Wisconsin, with the retail on the south side of the project, closer to the Purple Line station, and in conjunction with the existing retail that's going on at the Elm, the new retail that will be on Wisconsin at the Metro Tower to the south of us, and then our corner retail here. So there's opportunity for 3, continuous pieces of retail around the Purple Line station. Then we extend that up towards the 6-story base with 5 stories of residential, filling out that base similar to what was approved. And then the big change and the big idea here is really sort of resculpting the tower. Instead of sort of a tower on a tower, this footprint's not that big. And so we thought this is an opportunity to just let the tower be a tower. So we recrafted the footprint of the tower extrusion and taking that idea of inflecting the midpoints of all of the 3 frontages, and then pulling the corners out to kind of create this pinwheel shape. And we redistributed that mass that was allocated on Montgomery Lane, and that there was a previously approved mass on Hamden, and we've taken those masses that went out to the building face, and we redistributed them towards the corners. And you can see here, this is sort of diagram of pushing this in and then extruding out, pushing in and extruding out, pushing in and extruding out. So it really creates this pinwheel shape in floor plan, which is very dynamic. And then we take that idea. You can see here the two. The approved massing on the left and then our proposed massing on the right, and how it's similar but just a slightly different, and actually provides a little bit more step backs along all three of the frontages, while letting the corners really become ornamental and sculptural at the edges. And then instead of having sort of the tower on a tower, we thought this is an opportunity for the whole building to read as a singular tower, and we're essentially tugging the corners of the tower to create a sculptural and dynamic crown to the building, in conformance with the and then inspired by the design guidelines. So I can just walk you around the building with our proposed massing. So we dialed it back a little bit to kind of give you a sketch plan sort of introduction to the building, but then we have been working towards site plan. So we're reposition this as sort of a hybrid, a sort of a simplified massing. We're going to come in ultimately with obviously more windows and glazing, and you'll see a lot more detail. But this is sort of the inspiration and the direction that we're working towards. This is a view heading south down Wisconsin Avenue. We do have, this is an opportunity. We're very cognizant of the fact that right across the street is the one-story, sort of the old post office, and this potentially will be there low for quite a while. So as you drive south, this will be one of this corner will be, very visible driving south down Wisconsin. And then you'll see the line of towers of this project, the Metro Tower and the Elm to the south. One of the things, again, that we redid was the massing here for the Hamden East project to better represent what was approved or what was presented at the last DAP. We're just sort of working around the building. This is that same northeast corner from across the street. Again, you can see the sculptural elements of the crown, those setbacks coming down, landing on the base. We'll have active frontages on all three sides. Retail is going to be on the south. We'll have this will be the primary residential address of the property on the northeast corner. This is a view sort of looking at the Wisconsin Avenue facade. Again, the crown of the building stepping up. We are locating, and you'll see in the plans later on, the penthouse essentially is on the northeast corner. So we're using that extra volume of the penthouse at that corner, which was previously approved as well, and just creating that dynamic skyline pointing north. This is a view of the south face on Hamden. Again, very similar architecture, the setbacks really, creating those deep moments in the facade, the depth, the angular transition, and then we have the balconies sort of in those locations. You can see the relationship with the Hamden East project to the west of us, and that 22.5-foot step back, create that tower separation. This is a view kind of rotating back around on the backside of Hamden. This is where you'll see we'll have our garage entrance here and our loading docks here as we develop those even further. This is a view this is now back on the north side of the building. This is on Montgomery Lane, where you do have that grade change. It drops down towards East Lane to the west of the project, with the new Avocet towers directly across the street, with their large, the canopy of the penthouse, which really creates this, obviously this dynamic skyline between all of these towers playing with each other. These are a few sort of bird's eye views looking down. Again, you can see the step back and this sort of pinwheel to let the tower read as a singular piece that rises off of the building base. And we'll just kind of work our way around these diagrams. I think the step backs are pretty, very visible, very meaningful and impactful to this massing diagram. And then this is the Hamden Lane sort of bird's eye. And we'll walk you through, we did a bunch of diagrams as you've seen based on these perspectives. And then back on the Montgomery Lane side. So how did we, adhere to the design guidelines? Like I mentioned earlier, we essentially have three frontages. Wisconsin Avenue is the urban boulevard, and then both Montgomery Lane and Hampden are the downtown mixed-use streets. They do have different building placement lines. So Wisconsin's the most gracious. You'll have the 25-foot streetscape, and then Montgomery and Hampden are more a little bit narrower at 15. But all the step backs, the main step backers is essentially 10 feet minimum. So with that, we just sort of diagrammed each of the different frontages so you can understand how we complied and enhanced the design guidelines, the design through the design guidelines. This illustrates a few things. Obviously, that 25-foot setback or the building placement line on Wisconsin. We're providing essentially a 6-foot tree pit, a tree zone, a 10-foot pedestrian zone, and then a 9-foot building frontage zone to meet the 25 feet. The building is 6-story base, 5 levels of residential over the ground floor. It equates to about 66 feet, so it's under the 70-foot prescription. And we're inflecting these, the sort of the back part of all of these step backs is essentially 12 feet, and we angle out from there. So we're sort of exceeding the step back by 2 feet and bringing it back towards the corners. We go up to 250 feet, which would be the roof. And then above that, we have the penthouse. And then specifically on this corner, we will have the mechanical screen and equipment for all the mechanical elevator overrides, et cetera, that are required for these buildings. This is the Montgomery Lane diagram. You can see the 15-foot building placement. This has a 6-foot these are all sort of the minimums, but it's in line with what's happening to the west of us at Hampden East. We have a 6-foot tree zone, we have the 8-foot pedestrian zone, and then we have a 1-foot building frontage zone. Again, the step backs are all the same, but you can see the 22.5-foot tower separation step back on this one as well. And then moving over to the Hampden, essentially the same prescriptive measurements, the 15, 6, 8, and 1, 6-story base, 250-foot tower, and then the penthouse. This side, you can see we'll be putting most of the penthouse massing similar to the approved sketch plan on the northeast corner, and we will have pool zones up here as well as residential amenity terraces. One of the things that we are working on right now, which is we don't have all the details, we kind of kept it basic for you all, is we're landscape and Silva are now are working to meet the 35% green coverage to get the stormwater quantities. So we're working all that stuff out as we're right in the middle of that. So we'll come back with all of that at the next step. A couple of things we would just want to talk about: the service access parking. We have the curb, we have the existing, obviously it's a small Exxon station with the 3 massive curb cuts on the 3 frontages, and how we'll be cleaning that up on all 3 sides. One of the things that we know we need to work out, but we don't have the information yet, is we know there's an anticipated bike lane we see what's built across the street at the Avocet Tower, and we know it's planned to come across the street and go down Montgomery Lane. We just don't have that information yet, and we'll be working that with landscape and civil to integrate that into the into the site plan submission. But essentially, we'll have 3 clean frontages, and all of the loading and the garage entrances will be here on the southwest corner on Hampden. To compare that to what was previously approved, it is substantially cleaning up the Hampden Lane facade with taking that porte cochere out and limiting it to just 1 loading dock and 1 garage entrance. Let me just go back to this one real quick. Going back to the retail, we are putting the retail on this the south corner on the Hampden and Wisconsin corner. We do have some building utilities. We'll have to integrate fire control room, some exiting, but the main lobby will be here on the Wisconsin and the Montgomery Lane corner. As this goes downhill, we imagine this to be relatively flat and stay at the same level. So as you go downhill, you'll be sort of like from knee high to waist high, the ground floor will be above you. But we intend to have this all be amenities for the building, possibly the fitness center back here, the lobby leasing. So it'll have a very active storefront that'll be just above the grade as you go downhill there. So I wanted to describe that to you. Going back to this step back diagram, I think this was the main thing that we really wanted to get you all on board with, was this strategy as we move forward, because this is so sort of important to designing the building and delivering this for Greystar. But essentially what our takeaway was, this was the approved sketch plan here in the top left. The massing was predominantly concentrated on that northeast corner, and then it also extended south onto Hamden Lane. So those went out and into that out to the building face, or the build to line. They obviously kept the 22.5-foot tower step back, but those concentrations of masses we thought could be done a little bit differently. And so going back to that pinwheel notion of pushing in the three centers and pulling out the corners to create a dynamic footprint, and distributing that similar mass around the building. And so you always had the step back on all three sides, and then the corners became much more dynamic and interesting, is something that we thought was compelling. And those are also very meaningful units for the residents. And how that sort of translates sort of visually through the tower step back diagram, with the corners pulled out and then the midpoints pushed in to really create a dynamic tower sculpture. And then, just giving you a hint of what we could be doing and what we will be doing. We see this as a singular facade all the way up and down, but the base of the building will probably have a little bit more solid feel, with the use of piers, grounding the building, and active frontages on the three sides. We will celebrate the corner entrances, the residential, and the corner retail, and then extending that up through series. These are potential bay balcony extrusions here, and then letting the corners come down and extend through the base of the building, but stopping it at the second floor to have all the view clearances for that the county would like to see. And then going up, how that frame of the building can be expressed through glass and metal, glass and panel of some version, with the balconies reading at the corners, the balconies reading at the insets, and then crafting the tower top, and maybe and going up a little bit higher at the corner that has the penthouse plus the equipment screen. And there's a few different ways to do that, but this is one of the inspirations of having the angular corners all pulling in the different directions. And just for reference, we left the building plans in here for your reference, but essentially, if you have any questions, I think we can probably open it up to discussion.
So this is Rod. I actually like the massing better than when it was a senior living facility. I think it's subtly better, to be honest with you. I do have some comments, though. First off, your context drawings where you're showing a lot of the neighboring buildings around there, why didn't you put in your project at Wisconsin and Bethesda Avenue?
It's just the size of the file that got a little unwieldy.
Well, well, there's a point that I would like to make, in that, a town, a city is built of a great deal of diversity of building types. And I would hope as you develop this, you would develop a material strategy that is different than the building at Wisconsin and Bethesda Avenue, to create that diverse quality that you always find in cities. And I think that'd be my major point. A minor point is I like what you're doing with the top. I think you weaken it a little bit by showing that line between the penthouse and the mechanical space. And if that line just went away as you develop it and refine it, I think it would have more strength. I don't know that it needs more mass to it. I like the idea that you're not, in this case, accentuating the corner at Wisconsin and I forget the cross street, not Hamden, but whatever that cross street is in front of us.
Yeah, Montgomery.
Right. Hey, Brian, you're on mute.
I also have a question.
Sorry. Go ahead.
So for the west facade, it's facing East Hampton building. I know that you guys meeting the tower separation. Since this is a residential building, how would the light and air work on this facade since it's so close to the next large building?
Yeah, this is probably the best view of it here. Yeah, that we've. So if you remember let me jump back a second. This building is actually sort of it's a multi-use building in the sense that it has ground floor retail. Only the base, only the bottom 8 floors is residential, and then from the 9th floor up to like maybe the 21st, 22nd floor is office space. So this will be an office building from sort of the base up, and I think our building on the west face of it, adhering to that, we'll have units up here. They have, those will be what, 22 and a half, and they have 22 and a half. So we'll have the 45-foot tower separation between there. And then our lower units, we do build out the corner, build out this piece. And then there's a light well. There's a pretty significant well down there, or open, space. And then they're fully open on I think on the south side of the building. So there's, based on the design guidelines, there's adequate tower separation and light and air down in there. Obviously, another factor is this will all be green roofs. So actually, those are quite when these green roofs are built out, I think they actually be kind of a nice place to be, because there's a lot of vegetation in there, and it'll be probably a little bit cooler, et cetera. So
Okay.
I think they tend to be nicer than they probably look at in these views, but given the amount of vegetation that goes on these roofs now.
But I'm just wondering that the units along this facade might not have the best light and air and views given the distance from the next large building. My next question is, this is not a really design comment. I know that this is a business decision that you guys changed from senior living to residential development. What's the reason behind it?
I mean, it is a different applicant. The prior applicant decided not to go forward, and Greystar is a residential developer. So totally different applicant.
And this is a sketch plan application, right? Because I don't see a very detailed developed ground floor or site plan yet.
No, so and maybe I wasn't clear in my initial remarks. So we are in for site plan. However, it is our intention, what we wanted to do is first get the panels support for the general massing and such. And then it's our intention to come back right after we file the site plan application with what you would typically see in terms of level of detail for a site plan DAP submission.
Okay, I'll look out to that next presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, I just was trying to say, hopefully you can hear me this time. I was trying to say before that I agree that I think the massing on this is much better. I'm always suspect of towers within towers that are not real. And in this case here, the pushing back the center points of the facades and creating this kind of pinwheel motif around the building, I think creates a massing that is holistic and really tied to the idea of the building in a much better way. I also wanted to say, as I think that the shift in use has created a better ground floor plan, particularly much more friendly to Hampton Lane than the prior use. So it looks like you're going in the right direction there. I think the massing has a lot of potential to it. I'm a little bit worried about the thinness of the crown at the very top when the curtain wall just extends up. think you're going to want to think about exactly what goes on there, what that fin-like characteristic looks like. But you know, you guys are smart, so you'll be able to solve that for us for next time.
Yeah. Well, you, as you, yes, we'll be working on that. And I think I hear that along with Rod's comment about making this, you know, different. And we do have a tower under site plan several blocks south of here, so making it different.
Yeah.
We hear that as well. So I think some of those details we definitely we're working on and we're working towards, and we're quite ready. But we really wanted to get the sort of the massing sort of blessing that gets you all on board with that idea, because it's without that we didn't want to go backwards. So
It's also interesting, the building to the immediate south to be a tall building is much more traditional in nature. So I think to some extent that will help with the diversity comment as well.
mm-hmm.
I think massing is much more interesting. I think it, you know, complies with the approved plan where it needs to, and it cleans it up, as you've said very well, at ground level. I am just a bit concerned as it goes down the hill. You described a wall as you're walking up. I too have a brain freeze on the North Street.
Montgomery.
I don't know how high you said.
Oh, it won't be too much. It goes down a couple feet. It goes down several feet, but it makes access difficult. Let me put it. It makes ADA access difficult.
Oh,
And
no, I'm just saying from a street standpoint, if it, you know, does it get higher? Well, I haven't heard a real dimension. Is it high, 3 feet?
It's like, yeah, it's about 3 feet. We have it here actually on the edge. This enters on the corner up a little bit higher, and you can see it here. It's only a couple of feet for the ground floor as it goes up, as the grade changes. So it'll be very similar to this. I think it'll be subtle. The key is really it's not a good location for retail without folding the slab significantly, but for a residential lobby and amenity sequence, I think it will work quite well, and it'll only be a couple feet as it goes downhill. It's something that we could.
The devil is in the details. I mean, you know, you can solve it, I'm sure, but I presume the support of the building will come down to ground, and the elevated portion will be treated not as a major facade element, but sort of recessed. That'll help. But we'll look next time. I have every confidence you'll solve it. If it was 5 feet, I'd say maybe you ought to step the slab. But if it's only 3 at the worst, that's probably fine. I think your changes are creative, and I think it will yield a very nicely iconic building on that corner.
Great.
And I agree with everyone's comments. I thought Brian summarized it pretty well in his comments. You know, I was always a little skeptical with the previous proposal, the previous applicant with doing a senior and assisted living project here at this scale, at this kind of heart of the urban environment. So I think the change of use probably makes better sense from a market standpoint. And then also, as Brian mentioned, it does clean up the streetscape along Hamden quite nicely, because you need the pickup and drop off obviously for senior and assisted living, but here you can kind of negate some of that need. So yeah, I agree. I think this is headed in the right direction.
Well, we're excited to get back to you with the detailed site plan DAP submission after we actually file the site plan. So hopefully you'll be seeing us shortly, likely in the
Yeah, so with that, if there's no other comments, as Pat said, this project will come back to you before it goes to the board for site plan. So I don't think there's any need for a straw vote at this time unless you feel differently. Okay.
Thank you. We appreciate your comments. It's very helpful.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
All right, super. Thank you, everyone.